Hello and welcome to the Post-Up Show. This is Cyrus. We are going to get straight into it. Welcome to the show, Kay. We're going to be talking about the Brooklyn Nets. They have been incredible. Kaunda, would you agree?
Yes, I would. By the way, nice T-shirt there. But back to the topic.
I got it for free.
So you wear what you kill, hey Cyrus. You wear what you kill. I see.
Yeah, I mean, look, if this was the rule of the jungle, right? We'd basically be out there wearing Lakers gear for once, and a couple of animal furs. But hey, really sort of into that. But I want to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, who really have almost been wearing what they kill, and now they've signed James Harden. And this team has gone to another level. What was interesting was, we've talked about super teams for a long time. The Warriors debate about whether or not they started the super team trend. Then people saying, well, didn't one LeBron James go to Miami to form some sort of triumvirate, which was also a bit of a super team when you look at the likes of Haslam, that was part of that unit as well. But we're looking at the Nets now, and we're saying, what happens when you add somebody like this? This is a former MVP, a guy who's perennially been in the MVP conversation over the last couple of years, James Harden. He's averaging 26.4 points a game and 10.9 assists a game. Really, this is the best pickup that any team could have hoped for. And all of the questions around, can he play with KD? We'll still see about the Kyrie thing in a bit. But do you think this is going to work?
Cyrus, so far it looks like it just might. I was one of the people who was saying, look, you got three ball dominant guys, who's Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. But Kevin Durant, like I said before, he has showed us when he went to the Golden State Warriors that he can defer to another player because he's a pure scorer. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands so much for him to make a play for himself and score. He'll catch and release when needed to. So then we were left with the discussion of now we're going to have two ball dominant guys in Kyrie Irving and James Harden, but we haven't seen that trifecta come together yet. But what I'm seeing so far is scary, Cyrus. If you look at James Harden, he's played two games with the squad. He's averaged the double-double, if you will, and he is a walking double-double. Cyrus, James Harden is a walking double-double. The only thing that James Harden has been basically maybe criticized about is his lack of defense sometimes. But other than that, Cyrus, that is a walking bucket that they picked up. And I think besides the fact that they lost so much depth in their bench to get Harden, this is a great pickup. This is a great pickup. If you look at starting fives, this is a great starting five. And I think James Harden, he has played with KD before. Remember, this is like a reunion from back in the days at the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you see, they've done this before. All they needed was to maybe convince one Russell Westbrook to move from Washington and join them. Maybe they can get it. They can get the whole band back together again. I don't know.
Band back together. No, I think the band is banned. But looking at what you talked about in terms of Kevin Durant's production, yes, he is a scorer primarily. And I mean, look, he's averaging 30.6 points a game. His rebound numbers are not bad, 7.1. And then obviously he's still also assisting the ball, 5.7. So when you look at what's happening at the Nets, they're trying to get the ball into the hands of the best scorers, obviously. And what they've done is they've said, give me more scoring. So in essence, it's one of those where we'll beat you by scoring more than you, as opposed to stopping you from scoring. And I think it's a really, really dangerous path to go down, because whatever happens on defense can have a massive, massive impact on offense. So for instance, let's say they don't necessarily start any game, on a hot streak, and then the team that they're playing against then goes on a run, you're playing catch up. And so you don't want that. And even though you might have Harden, you might have Durant, and you might have Kyrie Irving, all of those guys would have to then start performing at the optimal levels. They don't necessarily have the time to sort of ease their way into games. But having said that, if they hit their stride early on, it's very tough to catch up with them. And when you look at the recent victory against the Bucks, you see exactly what they have in their scoring department. But some will feel that they're also lucky that Giannis just isn't great at closing out games. And because he's not a jump shooter, and his free throw shooting, the less said about that, the better. But let's also talk a little bit about Kyrie Irving, though.
But Cyrus, before we go to Kyrie Irving, right? Because Kyrie Irving, as you and I both know, is currently MIA. Kind of-ish. We don't know when he's coming back.
Working his way
back. We don't
back.
know when he's coming back. He's probably doing a couple of chants, burning a couple of herbs, spices. He'll be back soon.
You don't have
But
to
one
ridicule
person,
the guy. He's just taking some time out.
Cyrus, I burn herbs at home too, just to cleanse, Cyrus. I'm not dissing the guy. I'm just saying he's doing what he's doing. But one piece we forgot to mention, they've got another scorer, Cyrus, in Joe Harris.
Yeah.
Do you remember Joe Harris? Remember what he could do from three-point range? So they've got options, Cyrus. If KD and say and Kyrie are having an off day, now they can depend on James Harden and Joe Harris, who are both fantastic from three-point range, Cyrus. What they've done here is they've snuck in a super team right under our very own noses. You've got the big three who you can look at, but don't forget they've got the likes of Joe Harris that are still there. They've still got DeAndre Jordan, who you can play Lob City with on a day when you really want to, get up in there. So, Cyrus, this is a scary team. I mean, as a guy who supports the leading team in the West, I'm kind of scared that if they meet the Brooklyn Nets in full force, it's going to be one heck of a series, Cyrus.
It could, if the Lakers manage to get there. That's a story for another day altogether. But I wanted to talk about Kyrie because as much as he has been missing in action, he is still a high percentage performer. He's the kind of guy you would give the ball to when you need somebody to make something special happen. And averaging 27 points a game is no joke. I mean, with 6 assists to go with that. So when you look at what the guys are doing around them, you've got Harden averaging in the late 20s. He's averaging 26 points. You've got Kevin Durant averaging 30 points, and then you've got Kyrie Irving averaging 27 points. So if they stick to their averages, just those guys alone are enough to win you a game. Now, obviously, you mentioned the likes of Joe Harris. There's also Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. There's a few other players, bits and pieces players that they can call on to try and make their lineup a lot better. Though, you mentioned Harris, that's scoring. Who's helping them on the defensive end? And that's the key thing here. And DeAndre Jordan just isn't it. For some reason, they've gone all in. Some people have said it's player power, and the likes of KD and Kyrie have said DJ's going nowhere. That's who we want as our center. I personally would have just stuck with Jared Allen. But hey, who am I? I'm not a GM. But let's look at some of the other stats, and this is the key thing here. Currently, the Brooklyn Nets are averaging 119.3 points per game. That's the third best ratio in the NBA at the moment. Crazily enough, the Washington Wizards are averaging 120.5. Now, when you look at that, you think, okay, the Wizards are scoring a hell of a lot of points. They're also letting in a lot of points, and that's really the cautionary tale that the Brooklyn Nets should be facing as well. Sometimes you can have a great scorer, but it could be problematic if you're stopping people from scoring. What do you think that number sort of means? Like, do you think this is really what the Nets are leaning into? Trying to get that high scoring game?
You see, Cyrus, like you said, you used a very important word, and that's dangerous, Cyrus. It's dangerous to go all in on offense and say, okay, we're going to let them score as much as they want, but our MO is to outscore them. And as you can see, that's not working for the Washington Wizards, because the Washington Wizards, and if I may quote Bradley Beal himself, he said they couldn't stop a parked car. And I'm quoting Bradley Beal here from a press conference. He said they couldn't stop a parked car because what they're doing is they're scoring all those points, but in a losing effort. So which means when they average it out, they look as if they're scoring a lot of points, but more than half the time, they're actually scoring all those points in losing efforts. So it doesn't mean much. And I think you bring up something very important, and I hope the people in Brooklyn are listening, because, Cyrus, if you're depending only on your scoring and not defending, it's going to catch up to you at one point, because once they start slowing you down and working you out, because you got to remember, every team watches tape. Every time you lose, every time you win, you watch tape. You see what happened, where you went wrong, what they do, what the habits of their players. So at one point, people will work them out. I don't know how easy it will be to stop James Harden from going to the free throw line, because he seems to live there. But you might find out a way to stop a 7-foot moving bucket. You might stop Uncle Drew from getting to the hoop. I don't know, but if that happens, the Brooklyn Nets will be in deep trouble, Cyrus, because defense also wins games. I know offense wins games as well, but so does defense. And if you've let go of your defensive efforts. I mean, I can say in their defense, KD is also a pretty good defender. So
When
you
he's
got KD.
Yeah, definitely.
When he's playing hard, KD is a great defender. I've seen him play when he was at the Golden State Warriors and he played against the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was defending LeBron like they were the same size. I was like, wow, this tall, lanky guy is just giving LeBron a field day. And those long arms, he can get all over a player without actually fouling them.
That's the key thing, is being able to use the attributes that Kevin Durant has on the defensive end and make sure that he buys into that. And I think this is also, but we're talking about players buying into stuff and buying into the ethos that the team is trying to put together. And I think that's what we're seeing with Harden's move now. Everybody talks about ball dominance, and rightly so, because Harden has been that, Kyrie has been that, and KD has been that too. When he was at the Warriors, KD used to bring the ball up as well and play a little bit of point forward. But we forget as well that at one point, not in the not too distant past, James Harden led the league in assists. There was a point where he was playing point guard and dishing the ball out to all of his teammates. So he's not afraid to get the ball to other people. And I think that in the case of trying to win a championship, surely ego gets put to the side and you say, we will do and I will do whatever it takes to win us this championship. And I think that's what we're going to have to see on both ends of the court. Harden gets much maligned for a lot of his lack of defensive effort, but he actually isn't a terrible defender. When he's trying, he's not terrible. It's always just a question of, does he have the right size in that position? And he's average. I think that he's the kind of player that could do well there. But I think one thing's for sure. When you look at the Nets, and I put up a graphic a little bit just now, we look at most points in the game, they have clearly, showed that they can score a heck of a lot of points. But let's also look at the three-pointers, because that's going to be critical for any team chasing a championship. It's also weird where you see the stats and you see that from a three-pointers made perspective, Milwaukee Bucks has scored 223, the Nets 217. You're looking at a team that's taking three-pointers and making them. And perhaps the more crucial statistic is looking at the three-point percentage. And that's the most important thing here, is the sense that they're not just taking shots, they're making shots at a high clip. If the whole team is averaging 40.3 from the three-point line, then they're doing pretty well. Do you think that that's going to be the key area here for the Nets going forward? Because you mentioned their three-point shooting. Joe Harris. Harden is an obvious three-point threat. KD, Kyrie can also hit them. I remember one particular three-pointer against the Golden State Warriors to win a championship. So they can shoot.
Cyrus, this three-point percentage is very important, especially right now in a league where you win from the three. I mean, I think the Golden State Warriors have really changed how you win games. When the whole Splash Brothers situation started clicking and they won teams basically from gunning from beyond the arc, you saw the league. People who didn't even shoot threes much started shooting threes. Even the bigs have changed now. I know it started before the Splash Brothers, I think, with the likes of
everybody's leaned into it.
Chris Bosh at the Heat. Back in those days, I saw big guys like him taking it from three-point range. But since the era of the Golden State Warriors, Splash Brothers, everybody now has been trying to shoot threes. People are now starting to shoot from the logos. So, Cyrus, that three-point percentage is very important. And I think with them having basically 4 certified three-point shooters in Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Joe Harris, Cyrus, they're going to be a problem if they can stay consistent and they can shoot from three-point range. Because if we're getting threes, if I'm playing against you, Cyrus, we're getting threes and you're responding with twos, you know who's going to win at the end of the game.
It's just pure maths.
If you do, it's pure maths. We're going to win, and that's, I think, a dangerous arsenal that the Brooklyn Nets bring with them. And I think, they were forced to be reckoned with. They're scary, Cyrus. They look poised, and I hope the return of Kyrie, especially with the recent ripples in that team, the absence. But look, I think the absence issue is more with the coaches and the front office, because in terms of his teammates, he did send them a message to say he won't be coming. So I suppose the locker room might be a little bit more subdued than interactions with the front office and leadership.
Perhaps, and I think this might also be it in terms of when you take a gamble on a player, and it's not necessarily just about a fitness gamble or a form gamble, it's a personality issue. And sometimes some people don't necessarily gel with the system that you put in place, but then it's still relatively early in the Brooklyn experiment, if you want to call it something. And so I think that they'll have, a lot of time to try and fix things. I do want to end the show by talking about one of the important things that people need to pay attention to, especially with a team like Brooklyn, which is if they have championship aspirations, and they obviously do, a key attribute for them has got to be free throw shooting. And the fact that they're in the top 5 in the NBA when it comes to free throw shooting says a heck of a lot about the kind of team that this can be. Because when you're in championship games and those, conference finals and NBA finals, people get fouled. And you go to the free throw line, and if you're making your shots, you're putting pressure on the defensive team. They can't make any mistakes by fouling you. And if you're such good free throw shooters, then you're going to make them pay. And I think that's what we see when you've got the likes of Harden and Durant at the line, and they might get the ball late in games. So, you don't want to foul them. Kyrie too isn't a terrible free throw shooter, but primarily Durant and Harden, it gives you 2 options that you really just think, 2 players I cannot foul. I mean, that must make it a really, really scary proposition for players who think, what do I do? How do I try and defend them and steer clear of fouling? Because Harden has also showed that he can flop with the best of them. And he's won many a free throw in his time.
Cyrus, I totally agree with what you're saying. And basically, Cyrus, they've got 3 guys, actually. I do trust in Kyrie's ability late in the game to take that ball to the hoop and draw a foul. He's done that many a times, and he's great from the charity stripe. James Harden, need we say more? And Kevin Durant is a great free throw shooter. I mean, he can literally go eye to eye with the hoop. So anybody who's looking at the hoop eye to eye, I mean, he's gonna.
If that were true, Andre Drummond would be leading the league. But I hear you.
But Cyrus, you know what I'm saying? And those guys are gonna get the ball guaranteed late in the game. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna make defenders nervous, because they're gonna be scared of sending those guys to the free throw line and basically losing very tight games. Because that's the go-to move, Cyrus. If it's a very tight game and you want to rattle up the competition, what do? You send one of those killers to the hoops. They just drive. You're going to draw the foul, and then we'll take an easy lead and we'll keep building on it.
Exactly. I think that's an important note to end the show on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like this video. Subscribe. We actually have started seeing a really nice uptick in subscribers. So please join the family, join the Post Ups family. Make sure you visit postupzone.com, and you know that we will give you the best African basketball knowledge right here on the Post Up Show. Thanks for watching.